Okay, I'd like to welcome you all here today, both online and in the Silver Springs Hotel here today for our seminar 2021, Celebrating World Mental Health with the theme of Mental Health in an Unequal World. It's great to finally have people in front of us again after a very difficult year and a half. And it's great to have our speakers here today, as well as our chairperson, Ms. Mary Gregor. I'd like to introduce Ms. Mary Gregor now, our chairperson, just to say a couple of words to open our seminar.
Well, good day, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all here, especially the people who are here from Douglas Community College who came with Jackie and Gina from Douglas, and also send our best wishes to Sabrina, your teacher, who isn't very well. I'd also like to welcome, I think it's 1,300 people are watching online, so that's really great. We do miss you all. Usually we're here and there's hundreds of people, loads of noise and hustle and bustle, people going in and out and having a great time. So I hope you all will still have a great time, people who are here and the people who are watching us and their schools live. I suppose Cork Mental Health, our mission is to promote positive mental health, and this is one of our initiatives in that, promoting positive mental health here today. And we also support people who have mental health difficulties. Our speakers today, very exciting, Joanna Reardon, who I have admired for years, is here. She's waited a long time. We waited a long time to hear her. She was coming last year and of course cancelled. So thank you so much, Joanne, for coming back again this year. And also Liam Ducey from the Youth Health Services is here every year. And thank you, Liam, for coming back again to us this year. My job also will be to thank people, that this doesn't just happen by accident. I'd like to thank Brendan, our CEO, for helping to organise all of this, and our new education officer, Susan, and people in the office, Olive, Elaine, and they're very, very good to help bring it all together today. So I hope that you'll all sit back, relax, and enjoy the interesting programme that's ahead. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. Because it's online, what we're going to do is we're going to have the speakers speak first, and we'll do questions and answers afterwards. You'll notice online that you can there's a Q&A function. So if you have any questions throughout the talk, please just put your question in there, and then we'll ask the speakers at the end of that. So without further ado, our first speaker, as Mary mentioned, is Joanna Reardon. We've been trying to get Joanne to speak at this seminar for many years, and we're delighted to finally have her here with us today. Joanne was born in April 1996 with a rare disability known as total amelia. Along with her parents and 4 other siblings, they all decided that Joanne was not going to be treated differently and was instead a valued member of her family and society. Joanne, I've seen her recently, you might have seen her as well, doing punditry there on the Paralympics, and she did an absolutely fantastic job. And I hope that opens lots of doors for her, and we're just delighted to have her here today. So thank you very much, Joanne. Please.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I heard myself back. Yeah, no, thanks very much to everyone for having me here, speak in front of you here today. Nice to be here in front of Douglas Community School, and I think just as nice to be virtually in front of my old school of Milster Community School, if they're still online and still functioning, because the Wi-Fi wasn't great when I was there, let me tell you. So yeah, as Brendan said, my name is Joanna Reardon. I was born on the 24th of April, 1996, and I grew up in a family of 5, with 3 older brothers and 1 older sister who simply adored me. And by adored, I mean my eldest brother Dennis threw me into a chandelier, knocking out my 2 front teeth. We used to practice WWE moves on each other all the time, from tombstone pile drivers to Batista bombs and everything in between. So yeah, as my brother said, life beats you down, but you bounce back perfectly fine from my beating. So you should be fine for the rest of your days. I have no idea if that is psychologically true, but there you have it. I was born with a rare condition known as total amelia, meaning I was born without all of my limbs. So I'm only one of 7 people in the world born with this condition. So I suppose in a way it makes me a little bit unique. There is no medical reason as to why I was born this way, but I am delighted to say I have never allowed my disability to hold me back. And I'm continually striving to create a world that is inclusive, not just for able-bodied people, but for people with disabilities also. Being born with no limbs is often perceived by others to be a severely debilitating condition. And I can safely say that this was certainly the case by some of the doctors who first saw me. But my parents, my family and I, we decided to ignore whatever the doctors had to say, and we decided to take life into our own hands. To be honest, I have a confession to make. I hate the word disability. I hate when people use this word to describe me, and I hate the way people look and think of me as being weak or different. I, just like you and others out there, have the ability to achieve anything I want in my life. I don't look at my life and see the word disability. I only see ability. I've been extremely lucky in the way that I've been allowed to express my thoughts, ideas, concerns, and suggestions to anyone that I've met. Just because I have no limbs does not mean I have no voice. By April 2012, and on my 16th birthday, I was invited to the United Nations in New York, where I delivered a landmark speech to the world's leading women in technology on how technology has transformed my life, and was one of the first people in the United Nations to get a standing ovation. So if anyone else from Cork Mental Health or anyone comes here to do a talk and they say they were the first people to get a standing O at the United Nations, send them down my way and I'll put them in a Batista bomb or a Walls of Jericho myself, and take it from there. That same year in 2012, I was the recipient of the Young Person of the Year award for my contribution in highlighting the needs of people with disabilities. I've never shied away from the challenges I face, and each and every day, I always try to do something that will test my ability even further. Life for me has no limits. I always say the only obstacle in life is ourselves. In order to achieve the impossible, we must believe in the possible. It is not people with disabilities are the problem, it is society's attitude that is the obstacle. And as they say, there's no disability in life, only a bad attitude. In 2014, my story was made into a documentary called No Limbs, No Limits, which was directed and produced by my brother Stephen. We nicknamed him Steven Spielberg for those few years because he's the cheapest version of Steven Spielberg and he spoils everything with his camera. But fortunately, No Limbs, No Limits went on a nationwide cinema release throughout Ireland, was broadcast on RT1 to over 433,000 viewers, and has been seen by over 15 million people worldwide. So I always tell people about the time when I was in South Africa for a trip away, and I was in a shopping center, and this woman came over to me and she started telling me how great I was, how inspirational I was. And I mean, that was lovely. I mean, but ego stroking in South Africa doesn't go astray. But then she started mentioning achievements that definitely were not mine. You know, for example, won a Paralympic gold medal for South Africa in blade running. And I was like, this isn't me, but I better let her keep going. So she just kept going on and on and on. And then she was like, it's just so lovely to meet you, Oscar Pistorius. Now, at that time, Oscar Pistorius was under house arrest for murdering his girlfriend. So I have no idea what he'd be doing in a shopping center in South Africa. But I hope that woman is happy telling people she met Oscar Pistorius wherever she is to this day. On top of that, on the 24th of April in 2014, and on my 18th birthday, I was invited to meet with President Michael D. Higgins at his official residence in Orson-Uachtaráin as a formal acknowledgement for my ongoing work in the field of disabilities. As great and all as was meeting the president, 4 days before meeting him, I was honored to be in the same room as my idol. I'm a huge Barcelona fan and still bear no grudges. But for my 18th birthday, my mother arranged for me to meet Lionel Messi on Easter Sunday. And I mean, awards and everything are great, but to see Jesus Christ rise in the form of Lionel Messi on Easter Sunday and score 2 goals against Athletic Bilbao. I'm not religious, but I was there. I saw Jesus Christ rise. I can definitely confirm. In that instance, I'm seizing every moment and my plans are always developing. I was honored with a very prestigious JCI Top Outstanding Young Person of the World Award, or Miss Universe as I like to call it. The award has been given to the likes of John F. Kennedy, Henry Kissinger, Jackie Chan, and even Elvis Presley. So your standard WhatsApp group chat there. I referenced technology earlier and how important technology is in my life. Be it my car, you may call it a wheelchair, I call it my car, my iPhone, my MacBook, or anything else a 25-year-old needs in her daily life. One day, my family sat me down in front of our old computer, and before long, I was banging away on it with my chin, nose, and what I like to call my left hand. I played games that helped me to learn my ABCs and my small words. But curious as any other person, I then began to explore other ways and means of expressing myself. And just after my second birthday, I was given my first ever license and put on the road and given my first ever car. This was the key that would unlock my true independence because, let's face it, life is about living and we all want quality of life that is acceptable to all of us. Nobody could have ever imagined how it would be possible for me to drive this car, but I did. In August '98, my first set of wheels arrived home, and before long, I was whizzing around in and out of the house without a care in the world. I had my legs and I now had my freedom. I could go left, right, stop, swing around, moving forwards and backwards. I swerved in and out of the doors, the kitchen, the living room and the garden, taking bits of chair, bits of wall, bits of ankle with me wherever I went. But my car has allowed me to run, walk and achieve all things impossible. It even has a horn to let people know I'm coming. So there you go. Nobody ever expected me to drive it, but with the skills I gained from beating my siblings at PlayStation, I was an absolute natural on the road. So people ask me, all the time, like, do you ever get angry? Do you ever get sad because you were born the way that you are or whatever? And obviously sometimes I do, but I'm very lucky that I have great family, amazing friends, and more importantly, a strong sense of self. I always remember Carlos Puyol, the former Barcelona captain, saying, "Power is inside the mind and only the strong can endure." So as Brendan referenced earlier, I'm a sports writer with the Irish Times and do a bit of punditry with RT as well, which is quite fun. So I have two kind of sports kind of metaphors for you, two kind of sports life metaphors. So the first one's called rowing the boat. So rowing the boat has nothing to do with football or sports really. Rowing the boat is just a mindset. Rowing the boat means doing things the right way and accepting the results that come. It's about being dedicated to the process of winning every single day by being the very best version of you that you can be. It's about not ignoring the past, but instead always trying to learn from it in order to get better. And more than anything, it's about creating a community that has a positive aura with each individual contributing. Together, through love and trust, you all push forward together. So the process of rowing the boat is broken down into three very simple parts. First, you've got the oar. That's the energy you bring to your life, what propels you forward. Obviously, an oar is the only thing that can move a boat, and positive energy breeds love, and love breeds success. Secondly, there's the boat itself, which is made up of sacrifice. It's the thing you're willing to give up in order to achieve something you've never had before. So the more that each individual sacrifices, the more of themselves they're willing to give to others, the bigger the boat actually gets. And when you have a big boat full of people willing to sacrifice for each other, you can brave any single storm that comes your way. And finally, there's the compass, which symbolizes the positive direction that you choose to follow. Ultimately, your compass is determined by who you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with the wrong people, you're probably going to do the wrong things. But if you surround yourself with elite people, you're probably going to do elite things. It's as simple as that. My other lesson for you is about golf balls. I have no idea if any of you are into golf. I'm a huge golf nerd myself. But did you know that when golf balls were made originally, they made them quite smooth? So much different to the golf balls that we know today. And they hit them over and over and over again, and then they realized something. The golf balls that had dents from being hit, that were a little bit rougher around the edges, that they would actually travel much further than the smooth ones. So for anyone who's going through any hardships, or anyone who has had a tough time and has had to overcome it, just like the golf ball, that's designed in order to go further, and really you getting redesigned in order to travel further and maybe prosper ahead of others. So another friend of mine, she's actually a secondary school teacher up in Dublin, funnily enough. And we decided to put together what I initially wanted to call drunk girl in a toilet advice, because I believe the drunk girl in the toilet is the nicest person you'll ever meet on a night out. But that's not PC enough. So we decided to call them some friendly reminders that everyone needs to hear. So stop living for others and live for yourself. Life is short, so don't waste time on trying to gain others' validation. Live more in the moment. Take a second to just breathe and forget about yesterday or tomorrow. Stop wishing that your life could be different. The right things and the right people will come at the right time. Be grateful for the little things in life. Take responsibility for your life and stop blaming other people or other things for your own downfalls. Be the kindest person that you can be, not only to others, but more importantly to yourself. Take care of yourself, rest when you need to, drink some water, and put on that face mask. I'm talking the skincare type here. I wasn't actually talking about the COVID one either. Don't drive yourself into a burnout. Don't wait for the perfect time to do that thing. Don't wait for yourself to become confident or the new year or that spark of inspiration. Start now because there is no perfect time. Treat every day as a new beginning. You can start over whenever you feel you need to. And do your best, even if you're not where you want to be right now, keep going because hard work will always pay off. So this year's theme, obviously for World Mental Health Day and World Mental Health Week, we may as well drag it on while we're here, is obviously mental health in an unequal world. So the theme highlights that access to mental health services remains incredibly unequal, with between 75% to 95% of people with mental health challenges and in low and middle income countries unable to access services at all. And I think that one is really important to let in because there are some of us who are living in the world who cannot access the support we need when we need it, leaving basic human needs unmet. I suppose mental health and inequality have been two of the biggest conversation starters over the past 18 months. So this theme could not be more fitting. And joining up these conversations makes sense, as inequality and mental health are issues that continuously overlap through society and through the course of our individual lives. It's become probably incredibly obvious, if anyone wasn't already aware, that we do live in a very unequal world, whether that's access to vaccines or conditions people are living in that have made them more vulnerable. The pandemic has found these inequalities and has probably exacerbated them. On one hand, it's really positive, for example, that all these interventions exist and they're becoming more readily available. But there are still very big gaps and people having to rely on things like private therapy. I remember when I was living in York for a time, the average price for a therapist over there was about £100 per session, which is definitely something I didn't have as a student, which is a very expensive form of healthcare. And I think that's something we shouldn't really tolerate because we wouldn't tolerate that if it was a physical condition. If we actually said that 50% of people had to get treatment at a private hospital and pay it for themselves, we'd probably all be outraged. So I think really we have to look at ourselves and probably look at what we can do locally. We have to make sure that if somebody's got a mental health problem, they don't have to jump through hoops to get access and sort things out. We need to think about how do we organize a society that puts people first. This notion of working in the spirit of generous leadership, to focus ourselves around the person rather than the person having to organize themselves around us, I think will add a future of good healthcare provision at the moment. We're obviously here today to celebrate every one of your schools and everyone who has shown incredible commitment, determination, and motivation to be where you are today. And I can only encourage you all to never lose your spark. Because according to American author Bruce Barton, if you have anything really valuable to contribute to the world, it will come through the expression of your own personality, that single spark of divinity that sets you off and makes you different from every other living creature. So every single one of you is strong, smart, and talented. And I know because I've seen this already. But you're the ones who have the freedom, if you choose to use it, to think of new possibilities and crazy ideas. Because these are the only things that can help us become a country that is equal and fair. People ask me all the time about what's an activist, how do I become an activist, do I have to burn my bra or anything like that? And I'm definitely like, keep a hold of the bra if necessary. But for me, an activist is anyone who cares about something and has a talent that they're willing to put towards it. So every single one of us needs to prioritize. What is it that touches your heart the most? What I always tell people is, I could teach you about the law and I could teach you about the various issues that are occurring today, but I can't teach you how to have heart. You see, we don't need a movement full of experts. We need people who care deeply to stand up and offer what they have because there's a role for everyone. It's not about everyone trying to become the next, Greta Thunberg or Malala or even Martin Luther King Jr., because even he had clergymen and journalists and artists like Harry Belafonte. It's about how we connect to our neighbour and offer our skill set. As Mr. Belafonte has said, don't pay me back, pay back to the cause. There are obviously loads of people here today and loads of people online and loads of people probably within your school. And if you look around you, you will see leaders and innovators of all types. These are not just your classmates or your peers. They are your allies and they are your partners. They are your confidants and they are your collaborators. People working together and taking an active role in the development of their school and their community. Thus, the development of your country can achieve things once considered impossible. I think it was Howard Thurman, a modern civil rights activist and educator, who said, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive." What the world needs is for people to come alive. There's absolutely no reason you cannot do the same if you work together, help one another, and mentor those behind you. Every single one of you, as I said earlier, is strong, smart, and talented. But together, you will truly be unstoppable and achieve great things. I cannot be happier for all of you and the incredible work that was put into this event today. You cannot lose the hope and ambition that brought you here today. You have before you a wealth of knowledge, information, ideas, and opportunities. But most importantly, you have each other to help you to create the schools you want and deserve, the communities you want and deserve, and the countries you want and deserve. And always remember, you live for an average of 70 years, but if you leave people something to remember you by, you shall live forever. So thanks very much for listening to me. Really do appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me later or now. Late? Oh, now? Okay, whoa. And yeah, if anyone online wants to put them in the chat box, that's fine too. So thanks.
Yep. Thanks very much, Joanne. I'm just going to put it out there to the online world. If you'd like to put any questions in, please do it now. If there's anybody in the room who would have a question for Joanne as well, can you please raise your hand and ask it? And hopefully we'll be able to answer it.
This is a stressful situation.
Yeah. People, just in case, I was looking at my phone, the questions are coming up on my phone, so
it's even more stressful. I'm not seeing anything there either.
I wasn't doing Minecraft or something like that when you were.
Oh no, it's totally fine.
So, anyone?
I have one over here.
Yep.
I suppose for me, it's like, you know, for a long time, definitely when I was younger, I definitely used to try and suppress it like as much as possible, because I always felt the onus was on me, especially within my own friend group, to be the positive, happy, outgoing one, whatever it may be. And then I felt that pressure a little bit more the more I came into the public eye and stuff like that, because I was always kind of happy and jolly and telling my story, and it was nice and fun for everyone involved. And then I suppose fortunately with my job as a sports writer, I get to meet a lot of sports psychologists, which is quite fun. Fortunately not to check in. It's so handy being a journalist because you can literally ring for an interview and pretend it's a free therapy session. And one of them actually pointed out to me that we all know kind of about like toxic negativity, you know, being around someone who's negative all the time, and they can be a little bit of a drain, you know, and stuff like that. But she actually told me of a thing called toxic positivity, which I thought was quite interesting, which is basically when you're trying to be happy all the time and trying to show face, that actually you're suppressing all your negative emotions, and then they'll just come out in some shape or form, which probably isn't attractive, usually if you're crying at a Disney movie or something ridiculous like that, or in my case, crying over the wrong type of chicken goujons being in the freezer, and all that kind of stuff. So I suppose really for me, it's about embracing the bad day, like just accepting that I'm having a bad day, to have it, to go through the motions, and I think I have things around me that make me kind of feel good, you know, in that moment, so I'm not wallowing 100%. For me, it might be working out, it might be going to a football match, talking with a friend, maybe watch a movie, do whatever it is that I feel necessary, you know, to keep going. And I think to always have it in the back of your head that it's just a bad day, it's not a bad life, and to just kind of carry on, you know, that way. But definitely, I would say the biggest thing for me, because I'm a venter anyways by nature, I think it's probably the thing with being a writer, like you just have to vent all the time, just to talk to someone. And if you don't want to talk to someone, just put it down in a journal, you know, write it down, try and close the chapter on it, you know, effectively when you close the book. Because a lot of the times when you actually end up writing it down, your brain can physically see it, and then your brain is like, whoa, we're just being dramatic there for no reason, were we? And then you're like, I'm going to rip this page out and burn it and hope no one sees it, because this is actually mortifying. But it's all, you know, it's all healthy and it's all good things, you know, to be doing. Because yeah, as I said, I think when your brain can see it, then it understands. I know another sports psychologist, they always say to put like a color or a shape to it if you're having a bad day, because the brain acknowledges kind of symbols, you know, better than feelings. So if you're having a bad day, just pretend it's a circle, and then your brain can kind of deal with it a little bit better. And I know another sports psychologist who recommends doing like daily check-ins, is what he calls it. So it's basically like having like a list of goals for your day, and then ignoring them, and then coming back at nighttime and then doing a little report card on yourself to see how you actually got on through the day, to see what you need to work on and what you need to do better. So the toxic positivity one is the one that's worked for me probably the most, as well as the journaling. So they're the things that I would do, but they're the 3 tips that I found to be the most interesting anyways when it comes to having a bad day.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Joanne. And I think you actually answered one of the questions that came in from MCS, all in Mill Street. They all say hi. And
Hi, Mill Street.
yeah, and they asked, how do you stay so positive? So I think you've answered that question there. But hi from all the presentation Ballyphehane students. The girls were wondering about your experience in secondary school, and did you ever feel left out?
Funnily enough, no, our class was super small. So even if they wanted to leave me out, we literally couldn't because like we were just so small, like you'd see me anyway. So no, I never really actually had it. It was probably more when I tried to get involved with sport and be involved, is what I kind of noticed, that people were a little bit like, you know, she can't physically kick a ball or she can't run. So like, how do we involve her? And like, I was happy to just do anything. Like, I remember when I was about 5 years old, they were short on water girls for our local ladies football team. And I was like, I'll do it. And then they were like, oh God. And then my dad was like, oh, just let her do it because she won't stop annoying me if, you know, no one lets her do it. So the manager said, okay. And I remember going in and making the referee hold up the game while I delivered water to everyone, which is still really embarrassing. But I think it's just that whole idea of like understanding, and especially in sports, we're kind of guilty of it, that just because you're not the star player or there's someone who can kick the winner in a county final or whatever it may be, as very sexy and glamorous as that can be, absolutely, there are so many facets to a sports team or so many facets to an individual sports person. So I remember that was something I kind of struggled with, but I think basically on my end, I just kind of put the head down. I knew what I was good at, just kept driving on, I suppose, forced myself on people in a good way. Yeah, I just kind of took it from there. And then I suppose I realized then I had a passion for sports writing, which is a career then that I just chose to pursue. But yeah, I think that's really it. But I think if it's a case of you're not too sure how to approach someone, or, you know, because you're not too sure, I think just ask the person, because the person will probably tell you, you know, quicker than anyone themselves. And I think that is super important. Just go up to someone and ask. And if they don't want to go, that's fine. At least you've put out the invite. Because I think that might be the worst thing. Like, I haven't experienced it, but I've seen it in different primary schools and stuff with like kids with disabilities. You know, the birthday invites would go out and they wouldn't get one. I think it's just nice to still get the invite, even if you don't want to go specifically.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And they also asked then as well, but they'd said, thanks for a great talk, but also, what did you study in college?
I studied criminology, so I'm very clued in on all things drug users, sex offenders, and terrorism. If anyone has a question about that, that's totally fine. Yeah, I suppose really for me, I was just interested in how people think, why people think the way they do, and why society is built the way that it is. And criminology as a course was kind of one that kind of spoke out to me. And as I said to the editor in the Irish Times, you could send me to Russia to talk to the crazy ultras who beat the crap out of everyone, and I'd probably be able to rationalize it in a normal way for an article. And he was like, I'm not sending you to Russia to talk to the ultras. What if you end up dead? And I was like, well, it's a risk we all have to take, isn't it? I didn't end up going.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do we have any other questions from the room? No?
God, you're all very shy.
Well, just for myself and from everybody in Cork Mental Health, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here, Joanne. You know, to eventually get a hold of you and be able to get you here is fantastic. And to everybody online, thank you very, very much for your talk today. It's very much appreciated.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Now we'll be introducing Liam Ducey. Liam is a Youth Development Officer with the Youth Health Service in Cork. Liam explains what this service has to offer to young people, what it might be like for a young person to access the service, and what they can expect. We've had Liam speak with us, we just found out there earlier, since 2006, and we have him back every single year, and when you hear him speak, you'll see why. So thank you very much for Liam coming along again to us today. Thank you.
How are you? There's normally about 800 of this thing, like, You see, you really got the short straw this year. But thanks a million for coming along, because it's not easy when you're in a small group in a place. So thanks a lot. Hello, cyber world. No, I have to hold this yoke, I have to hold this, and I have to hold my stress ball, so I'm getting stressed already. Yeah. I'm gonna lose that. Sorted. Okay, normally when I'm here, I like to say hello to people, so hello to Douglas. That reminds me, sorry, I go off on tangents all over the place as well. That reminds me, years ago, we were out in the Roadstone Park, and there was about 800-900 in the room, and like that I said hello to every school, and I was getting a great big way back and the whole lot. And then I said a little bit about myself and where I'm from. So I'm originally from Mayfield. That was kind of the reaction on the day. There was total silence in the place, apart from one guard sitting up the front who was based at Mayfield Garda Station, and she gave me a little bit of a woohoo. Douglas come many years ago, I was out near school and I actually said that I was from Mayfield, and a fella shouts up from the back of the room, mind your wallet. The same day I drove in a white panel van, I was wearing a hoodie as well. So we put all the stereotypes together, so I kind of eyeballed them and said, yeah, mind your wallet. The other experience I had in Douglas Com going back a few years, sorry, I'll get to everybody else in a second. I was given a talk in your school, and the class were all kind of sitting in the classroom, obviously looking up. And at the back of the room, there was a teacher, but between the teacher and the back row, there was a door. And right in the middle of the whole thing, this guy, he's about 6'3", walks in a tiger onesie. Apparently they were getting ready for some kind of a play or something, or a musical, and the man was dared to do this. So I asked him afterwards, I said, geez, fair play to you, like. But the thing was, nobody in the class actually copped that this happened, except for the teacher and myself. Probably one of the more bizarre experiences I had was in year school. This guy walked in, literally across the back of the room, waved at me, stood there, gave me thumbs up, and then walked out. And nobody else caught what was going on, apart from the teacher was sitting there with her mouth open, and me. And I just waved, and of course they all thought I was insane. They thought I was waving at the teacher, actually. So I'd like to say hello to Ballincollig Community School, Sacred Heart below in Clon, two schools I have been out to in the past. Always had great crack there. Somebody that isn't on my list is Beara. I believe it's Beara Community School, I'm presuming. Had some great crack back there in the past as well. So we have Mill Street Community School, Clostervirran, Crosshaven, St. Coleman's from Moyes, my son went to. He left there about 2 years ago, so hello to Coleman's. Closter Gubnerton, presentation in Ballyfahan, Glanmire Community School, Closter Pobble Van 3, that's in Bantry, St. Patrick's College, just up the hill here in Gardeners Hill, Mary Immaculata in Dunmanway, St. Fanahan's, another school I've been out to many times over the years in Mitchellstown, St. Al's inside in the city, St. Francis College in Rochestown, Regina Mundy in Douglas, Coachford College, Northmon, and the school finally where my daughter went to school, that's Loretto in Fermoy. So hello to everyone. We're sorry you're not here, but thanks for tuning in, okay? That's usually met with either a stunned silence, which has kind of happened today, or usually people kind of say, what? Very often when I go to schools, the most common question I'm asked is, do I want a teacher in the room? Most schools at this stage have a policy where they'll have a teacher sitting in the room in case the person coming out is a total nut job altogether. You know, it's a kind of a safety thing. So this particular day, I'm going to go back now about 8-9 years ago. I was out in an all-boys school, not year school, okay, a different one. And the particular group, I was going into 5th years, and the particular group, the teacher said to me, said, Liam, we're going to have 3 teachers in the room because this crowd are tough. So I said, all right. I said, do any of you watch The Young Offenders? Yeah, okay. Do you know where Connor lives with his mum and The Young Offenders? And next to the house, there are steps. 4 doors the other side of those steps. That's the house I lived in for the first 8 years of my life. So that's filmed in a place called Ballinderry Park, which is in Mayfield, literally up the hill here behind us. So when she kind of said to me, this crowd are tough, I kind of laughed. I said, all right, fair enough. So the 3 teachers come into the room and they took up a strategic position at the back of the room, leaning against the radiator. And then I heard this sound, okay? So their first mistake was they let 80, 50 lads walk through a small classroom door in one group. So I heard the sound coming up the corridor, "Oh," and they all came in doing something, and it took me back to my days in school. And I don't know, is this a male thing in particular? Have any of you had the experience sitting in front of me, or even out there in Cyberland? You're walking up the corridor and you see your buddy walking towards you. And for some reason, but it makes sense in your head, you hit him a slap. Have you ever done that? There's a couple of lads going, "Oh yeah, I did that yesterday, hit your man a slap." Do you know, you're kind of walking up and suddenly you get, "Poof, how's it going, how things?" And about 3 weeks later, your man is walking by you again, he hits you a slap, "Poof, I'm grand, song, thanks." And it's a bit like that. So they all came in hitting one another. But he ate him, "Oh, tum, 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 tum." They're all mangling one another, and eventually they settled down, and that was grand. And in the first 2 minutes, I mentioned the word sex. What happened in the room, do you think? What's that? Explode. Yeah, bang on. The two answers I get to that is it either went quiet or it went a bit loud. The whole exploded is a great word. The whole place went absolutely ballistic. Whoa! Tum, 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 tum. Plastic bottles suddenly became missiles. There was bottles being thrown across the room. There was a guy sitting at the back and he actually found A4 sheets. It was like Heathrow Airport. Suddenly there was airplanes started flying around the room. The 3 teachers wanted to mangle someone, but they didn't know who were they going to mangle first. I was giving the teachers daggers of looks because I've one rule: if ever I'm out of the classroom, whatever happens, I'll deal with it. There's no panic. But in the midst of all the chaos, from the back corner of the room came the following sound. Bah! There was a guy started bleating like a sheep at the back of the room. And the minute that happened, I knew what was going on. I said, "There's my guy, sheep guy," okay? Because you'll often find, particularly if it's a gang of lads, somebody has to take on the job of the man. And that's what was happening here. So eventually they kind of settled down. Oh yeah, you know, there's desks in classrooms where there's a small table attached to the chair. Do you have them? Very often they're music rooms, I believe. There was a guy sitting in one of them at the back of the room, and the fella next to him hit him so hard, your man fell over, but he was wedged into the thing. And it took about 3 people to get him out. So eventually the whole thing kind of settled down, and I asked the following question. I said, "Lads, when you hear the word sex," I said, "what words come into your head?" So sheep guy being the man, he starts throwing words back at me. Now, I leave it up to your imagination as to what words he threw back. First one rhymed with bank. All right, I wasn't expecting anyone to say it, but you're bang on. That was the first word he said. I was in the classroom one day and a fella starts doing this up the front. Ank, bank, kank, dank. And I was going, "Oh, geez," I said, "start at the other end, but you get there way quicker." So what he didn't reckon, of course, he got a great laugh and he said this, and he was delighted himself. And he threw up about 6 or 7 words. But what he didn't realize I was going to do was every word he threw up, I turned around, I wrote it up on the board behind me. Exactly as he gave it to me. And after about 7 words, something very unusual happened in the room. The whole place went deathly quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And I remember asking one day, I said, "Lads, you gone very quiet." I said, "What's the story?" And next thing he puts his hand up and he says, "Sorry," he said, "can I say something?" No. "This is a fella who's been throwing bottles around the place. He was involved in the airplane manufacturing business that broke out to the back of the room. He was also involved in the horsing your man over who was wedged into the chair. He was bleating like a sheep. He was throwing words up at me. Now he asks for permission to speak." So I said to him, I said, "You haven't been quiet so far." I said, "Should drive on, what's the story?" He said, "You wrote the words up on the board." I said, "I did." I said, "I asked a question," I said, "and you were the only one in the room with the courage to answer it." I said, "Thanks very much." And he looked at me and he went, "What?" I said, "You had the courage." I said, "I asked a question and you were the only one in the room with the courage to answer the question." I said, "You answered it for a laugh, I get that. But I said, you didn't give me 1 answer, you gave me 7 answers." So I said, "Thanks very much, I appreciate that." And again, he looked up at me and went, "What?" And then I set the group a challenge that day. And ever since this incident, I set every group I meet this challenge. I said to them that day, and I'm saying this to the people out there as well, you can use the next bit of time that I'll be talking to you as a chance to zone out, or to mess, or to go to sleep, or go to the bathroom, or whatever. Or you can use it as a chance, hopefully, or an opportunity to find out about something which I think could be very relevant for you. I'm delighted to say the group that day, they took the second option. And to this day, they'd be one of the best groups I've ever worked with. They're absolutely outstanding. Sheep guy came up to me at the end of it. You know, I gave the guy's name is. Sheep guy came up to the end of it and he says to me, he says, can I say one thing to you? And I said, you can, of course. He said, thanks for not throwing me out. I said, what do you mean? He said, I get kicked out of class quite a bit. He said, a bit of a messer, like, you know. I said, and I say it as I see it. And I said, well, I said, in all my years going out to groups, I said, I've never once asked anyone to leave a room, ever. So I said, I'm delighted you threw the words up. So I'd also encourage as well questions. So out there and here, at the end of this, if you have questions, throw them at me. If I do my best to answer a question. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. Just very quickly, my own background, apart from where I grew up, I've been a youth worker for 30 years this year. Makes me seem very old when I say it that way. For the last 17 years, I've been based, or 17 and a half years, I've been based in the place where I'm currently working, and that's the reason I'm here today. Prior to that, I worked as a drugs worker. I was based in Mayfield. I got the chance to work where I grew up. I love Mayfield. I'm very passionate about Mayfield. Even hear my voice when I say it. Before that, I worked with the homeless with Cork Simon community about a year and a half. And before that, I worked in a lot of different other youth settings. So I hope you see today as an opportunity. And if we have a bit of a laugh as well, that's good. I will mention sex quite a bit because we do a lot of stuff around sex and sexual health. I had a girl ask me one time in the class, she said, sorry, are you obsessed with sex? And I said, no, I said, I just get to talk about it every day. It's great crack though, okay? So I'm here today to talk about this place. This is a place called Youth Health Service. Do you all know the railway station, train station, yeah? At the back of the train station, you've Horgan's Quay, and the next quay as you're heading into the city is Penrose Quay. So on the corner of Penrose Quay and Railway Street, you'll see that building. It's a really old historical building. It's well over 150, 160 years old. We've been based in there since 2013. We moved there from Shandon Street. We used to be at the end of Shandon Street. So in there on the ground floor is a service called Youth Health Service. It's the only service of its kind in Ireland. There's nothing else like it on the island of Ireland. So relatively speaking, it's on your doorstep. The age range we work with is when somebody starts secondary school up until their 24th birthday. So you're TY, isn't you, I think, yeah? So I'd be saying an average age, maybe if he's sitting in front of me, is possibly 15, 16, I'd be guessing. So if my maths are correct, you can use the place for the next 9 years. Back in 2004, before we opened our doors to the public, we asked young people your age what type of a place it should be. So rather than asking adults, we actually said, you know what, let's ask the people who are going to use it what type of a place it should be. They came up with the name of it. And the one word they asked us not to put in the title was the word sexual. They said if it was called Youth Sexual Health Service, that might do two things. They said it might actually stop people coming in, but it might give the impression the only work we do with our sexual health. A lot of it is, but not all of it is. They then said to us that the place should be free of charge. So the only one of its kind in Ireland is in the road, literally in the quays, and there's no charge for the service. They asked us to put in free tea, coffee, hot chocolate and water, so we did. Teenagers, of course, then chanced their arm and asked me at the time, I remember working with the focus groups at the time, they said, Liam, would you put in free minerals, potatoes and chocolate? And we said, lads, it's a health service. No, I'd love it if we'd free chocolate in the place, but I would be diabetic at this stage, so I'm kind of glad we didn't go that route. It wouldn't look good if you came in, you saw free potatoes thrown up in the place, up on the table inside. But it is a free service, there's no charge to the service. They wanted the place to be chilled out and informal. And it's very important for young people. They feel that the staff based inside in the place should be relaxed, informal. My name is Liam, that's it. The fancy title I always say is on that yoke, that's where it stays. All of our staff are called by their first name. We don't wear a uniform, we speak in plain English, and there's no such thing as a stupid question or comment ever. So inside in the service you can be yourself, because they also asked for a service that was non-judgmental. The most important thing about anyone, once they walk through our door, is your name, who you are, and you're treated with the dignity and respect that is your right. It's the most important thing about anyone, not why you're coming in the door. They also wanted a service that was confidential. Now, when you ask most people what does that mean, they'll say secret or private or confidential, and it is a confidential service. It's confidential in the following ways. In order to get into our waiting room, somebody has to press a button to let you in. So it's not a case of somebody gets off the train from Mallow someday and says, geez, I'd mangle a hot chocolate because they're free hot chocolate and they're going to get one. It's not a youth cafe. Part of my role, as I said, I think looking at the list, practically all of the schools in that list, including your own people sitting there in front of me, I've been out at some point over the years talking about this service. Outside of the four walls of YHS, I will never salute anyone. I've met loads of people walking around town, or I'd go in, I'd be standing up in front of a group and I'd recognize people in front of me who've used the service. At no time will I actually salute anyone, because it's really important to respect people's privacy and confidentiality. So I will never salute anyone outside of the service. And also, if somebody goes into any of our medical clinics, that's between them and the doctor. However, there are times we might not be able to keep something private or confidential. Just a random, and I know you're the ones in front of me, could anyone tell me of a time we might not be able to keep something private? Any ideas? Crime, thanks very much. Yeah, crime is actually one. Anything else? I'll come back to these in a little bit. Yeah. Medical emergency. Yeah, it could be a medical emergency. Anyone who comes in, we always ask for an ICE contact, so that's in case of emergency contact. It's a rare one. Doesn't happen too often, but it could be. Yeah. Anything else? The leaving start to be a piece of cake after this, lads. Trust me. There are 5 situations we can't promise to keep something private or confidential. If anyone informs a member of staff that they're suicidal, they're going to harm themselves or somebody else, or they have harmed themselves in some way, to best help them, we might need to talk to somebody else. And I remember a situation about about 12, 13 years ago at this stage. A young woman, aged 15, walked into the service on a Friday. She'd heard me speaking at her school. So she asked for me by name. I suppose luckily, the way things panned out, I was there on the day. Brought her into one of our counselling rooms and we sat down, and it was obvious things were not good with her. So she spoke for a little bit, tears were streaming down her face, and then I asked her 3 very direct questions. And inside in our service, we will ask direct questions. I said to her, I said, are you suicidal? And through her tears, I said, have you thought about how you're going to take your own life? And through her tears. And then I said to her, I said, you have your plan made. And I said, have you the means to carry out the plan? And she said, she was with me for about 2 hours that day, but before she left the service, I'd spoken with the manager of the service, I'd spoken with her doctor, I'd spoken with her mother, probably one of the hardest telephone calls I've ever made. And I also spoke with a family relative who came and met her as she left the service. But going out the door, she said to me, Liam, she said, I came in here knowing you would do something about this. She said, I need help. And I knew that day I could not keep what she said to me within the 4 walls of that room. In order to get help for her, I had to talk to somebody else. And I'm glad to say that after that day, she came back and used the service multiple times again. So that's one situation. The second one, as you said, there was crime. If anyone comes in and tells us they're doing something illegal or involved in crime, we don't come up against that too much, to be honest. We do come up against the flip side of it, where a young person might disclose they've been the victim of a crime. And because of some of our medical work, we do come across young people who would tell us they've been sexually assaulted or they've been raped. And to best help them, of course, we would have to talk to somebody else. The third situation is very rare. It's only happened 3 times in 17.5 years. The 3 situations, the young person involved was either in residential care or foster care, and the courts asked us for information. They made a formal request for information. 4th situation is connected to your ages. Can I get a show of hands from the people in front of me? If you're 15, would you put a hand up? It's most of you. 16? Is there anyone 17 in the room? Yeah, thank you. Anyone 18 in front of me here? No? Anyone 14? Yeah, thank you. So 14 to 17 covers you all, yeah? What are you all legally in the eyes of the state? What are you? I love some of the answers I'm getting there. Typical answers I get. I was out with a group one time and I got typical answers about minors, adolescents, juveniles, teenagers, young adults, and I was going, nah. And there was a guy sitting up the front in the corner and he says, we're not saying it. I said, you're not saying what? And he got agitated. He stood up. The guy's about 6'3". I'm looking up at him going, she's the idea, man. He said, we're not saying the C word. I said, okay. So then I said to him, do you mind me asking how old are you? I said, I'm 17. He's looking down at me. I said, Jesus, the idea, man. I said, I have bad news for you. I said, you are the C word. You're a child. Anyone under 18 is a child legally. So if any child was to tell a member of staff something, and we're worried about that child's welfare, we may need to talk to somebody else. And the last situation is around something I'm going to come back to in a while, okay? But we do make one promise to young people in YHS. If we ever need to take anything further, we'll never do anything behind somebody's back. We'll always tell you what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and probably most importantly, why we're going to do it before we do anything. Because that at least gives the person a chance to tell us how they feel about what's going to happen next. I'll come back to the last one in a while. What does the place actually do? Okay, now, all of you guys sitting here in front of me, I've given you one of your teachers an envelope and in it are brochures which kind of goes through this stuff. Anyone out there in Cyberland, I suppose if you have a buyer in front of you, you might want to write this down. It's just important that you're aware of the place does. So YHS twice a week has a contraceptive clinic for young women. So that's on a Wednesday afternoon and a Thursday morning. We have a full range of contraceptives available. The morning after pill, or what's called the emergency contraceptive pill, is available. Free pregnancy tests are available, and post-abortion medical checkups are available as well. We have an STI clinic twice a week. That's our sexually transmitted infection clinic on a Tuesday afternoon and a Friday morning. It's an outreach clinic from the main clinic in the South Infirmary Hospital. So we have a doctor, a nurse, and a health advisor come in. We run full clinics for young people so they can get a full checkup done, get their results over the phone now, and come back for a full range of treatments. We also then have unplanned pregnancy counselling. That's where we provide all option counselling around parenting, adoption and abortion, and we do provide post-abortion counselling. We provide general counselling, drug and alcohol support and counselling, youth work support, that's me, and health promotion, information and support as well. So that's all of the stuff that's provided inside in the service. How can you get to us? The phone number is a bit of an unusual number, and for all teachers present and all teachers out there looking in as well, as soon as this information happens, we will get it out to schools. As I understand it, our number is changing soon. They're getting rid of all 076 numbers, which a lot of HSE services have. So there will be a new phone number. So for the time being, the best way to get in touch with us is the email address, yhs@hse.ie. You can also just walk in. We do accept walk-in referrals, but you have to keep in mind that for a lot of those clinics that I mentioned, there is a waiting time at the moment. But we will always ensure the young person will get to talk with somebody just to make sure that they're okay in the short term and see what we can do for them. Very often young people will ask me the question, like, do you have to get a GP's letter to come in, or does somebody have to refer you in, a teacher or somebody like that? It could be a service provider, get you into the place. It could be your friend, tells you about it. Most young people now hear about it from friends. It could be your family, it could be word of mouth. You could walk in yourself. You can actually refer yourself. You can make contact with the service and say, I'm worried about something or whatever. You don't need somebody to do it for you. I love the minions. I've come across some of these quotes kind of over the years. A friend who understands your tears is much more valuable than a lot of friends who only know your smile. The last year and a half, and I'll come back to this, and this has been well said over and over and over again, we've gone through the most bizarre, off-the-wall time. We were only chatting a while ago there at the back, and some of us know young children, little kids, who know nothing other than seeing human faces with masks over their face. And young children, little children, rely on facial expression so much for communication, and it's just been off the wall. We all know older people who've gone through a really difficult time. We all know friends your own age, and friends my age, my friends, who've gone through a really difficult time. And if there's ever been a more important time to actually reach out to your friends, it's now. And I always go on the basis, and it's an exercise I do with young people, it's just around the whole thing of our support network. Who there is for us? Who there can support us? And you don't need a massive, long list. I have one friend that I've kept in touch with from primary school. We sat next to one another in junior infants and we caught up for a walk for the first time in 14 months, about 2 weeks ago. And the amount of weight taken off my shoulders after that 2 hours spent in the company of my friend was huge. You don't need a massive amount of people, but having those people that are there just to provide that support or a listening ear is so important. Very often get asked the question, what can you talk about? The best answer I ever got to that question was a young fellow who said one day, you can talk about anything really, but they do the sex stuff a lot. Which is a kind of a weird way of kind of putting it. There was a group come into the service a few years back to visit it, and I asked them why they visited the service, and this girl answered the question by not thinking. Do you know the answer without thinking? She said, we're here for sex. And everyone kind of looked at her and kind of, what? And I said, oh, no, I said, we're here for sex education. She said, sorry, it was just a way she said. I said, okay. I said, you're probably thinking of somewhere else. That's not us. We do talk about the sex stuff a lot inside it. And sexual health and mental health, I believe, are very closely connected. Because for a lot of people, when we talk, and I'll come back to this in a while, we talk about the pressures that are there in people's lives. And we talk about the pressures of social media and the pressures about the expectation that's there in relation to relationships and everything else. It's absolutely huge. And it's something I'm dealing with every day of the week. The last situation where we can't promise to keep something private or confidential is to do with this one. The bottom bit, the S word, I had a parent phone me up a number of years back, and she said, it kind of tied in with the question, what can you talk about in there? She was really Cork. She had a real Cork accent, and she says, how are you, boy? She said, I got your number from someone, and she said, do you talk about the S word in there? And I said, I'm sorry? She said, do you talk about, do you know the S word? I said, what S word? I said, stress, is it? I said, we would, a lot of people be very stressed. I said, no, boy. She said, the real S word. I said, stress. I said, study. I said, exams. I said, I would come up, geez, no, boy. Next thing she says into the phone, she goes, hang. And I go, what? She going, hang. And I said, I'm sorry, the line's gone very bad. And next thing she whispers down the phone to me, she goes, sex. And for some reason, I don't know why I did this, but for some reason I whispered back at her and I went, sex. And she says, yes, sex. And then I'm in my own head going, okay, this is getting very weird very quickly. As I said, we do talk about sexual health quite a bit. But then there followed a whole 10-minute conversation as to what stopped her from actually saying the word. And she said, geez, I don't know, boy. I suppose it's just embarrassing. I said, you know, I've come across that quite a bit. And this was a parent. The last situation is around, very often I get asked the question, what's the legal age, to do it? And I go, to do what? So I'll ask you the question, what's the legal age of consent to sex in Ireland? I've heard 2 answers so far. I've heard, okay, I'll go over to show of hands. All right, I'll go to show of hands now. I think I heard 3 answers. Would you just shove your hand up what you think? Don't do what a fella did one time. He was sitting up the front like this. Right? He had his hand ready to go up. But he kept looking over his shoulder. He was sitting in the front row of the class. And he was waiting for the majority to put their hands up. Now, only I witnessed this, I would have said it wasn't possible. Okay, I actually saw this happening. So he saw the majority shove their hand up for a particular answer, right? And in his act of, he just finger ready to go, of doing this, he flew too close to his face and he somehow managed to ram his finger up his nose, right? So literally I saw the guy turn around and go, and all I heard was, oh, geez, and he gave himself a nosebleed. He's now dripping onto the table. The teacher was in the room, actually stepped out about 10 seconds before he put his hand up, and she came back about 20 seconds later. She was missing no more than half a minute. And there's your man bleeding onto the table, right? So the teacher asked the obvious question, geez, and when he gone, what happened to him? Some fella decided, let's nail the Nari from the back and shouts up, miss, he hit him. I became 15 again, turned to a teacher who was about 20 years younger than me and said, miss, I didn't touch him. I said, all right, this is getting ridiculous. So will you shove your hand up for what you think? If you think the legal age is 18, would you shove your hand up? I think I heard somebody say it. A few of you on that one, okay. If you think, actually do this at home as well. Do this in school as well. If you think it's 17, would you shove a hand up? If you think it's 16, would you shove a hand up? Okay, a few of you haven't put your hands up at all. If you think it's different for boys and girls, would you put your hand up? Couple of people kind of going with that one. If you're not sure, would you put your hand up? If you couldn't be bothered putting your hand up, would you put your hand up? Actually, you were very good. Most people put their hands up. The reason I asked that one, I had a guy a few years back walked into a class. What was interesting about this guy, his bag came first, okay? So picture the scene. The whole group had walked into the class. I was standing at the door with the teacher, and we were about to close the door, and next thing, this bag came in, okay, independent of the owner of the bag. So literally, Imam was in the corridor, he caught the bag, and he horsed it through an open door, and it skidded across and landed near a chair. And your man walks in after the bag with what I call the gatch. You know what a gatch is? He was kind of, yeah, it was all shapes, like you kind of chewing the gum. He had a jacket half on, half off. The uniform was immaculate. You could smell the aftershave coming ahead of him. Okay, he was layered in the stuff. He had 2 earrings pierced, they were sparkling. He had designer glasses, the hair gel was in, the whole shebang. And he kind of walked in with the gatch. As he passed the teacher, he winked at her and he says, all right, miss. As he passed me, he winked at me. He never met me before, and he winks at me and he goes, all right, bud. And he goes over to the chair that was empty near where his bag landed, and he sat in the chair like this. He didn't sit in the chair, he kind of wore the chair, okay? He kind of slipped into it and he was chewing the gum. And he didn't move a muscle for about 20 minutes until I got to that question. And he was the only one didn't put his hand up for anything, right? So that was the day I kind of threw in the question, if you couldn't be bothered putting your hand up, would you put your hand up? And he does this. Right? His finger moved from there to there. So the only movement the guy made was that. And I went over and I kind of patted him on the shoulder. I said, thanks for that. I said, I'm just glad you still have a pulse. I thought the guy was gone into, you know. At the end of the session, he waited for everyone to leave. The room was now empty, and he gets up and he walks out the same way he walked in, with the gadge, looking into an empty classroom. As he passes the teacher going out the door, no, he said to me before, he passed me and he said, nice one, bud, thanks for that. And he winks at the teacher going out the door and he says to her, nice one, miss. And she looked at me and said, Jesus, what I have to put up with inside in this place. And he disappeared up the corridor, and I said to him, he left his bag after him. I said, what's the story anyway? I said, he's left his bag after him. She says, Liam, she said, let me put it this way. We're not even sure if he's registered in the school. So the guy just shows up. He doesn't cause any hassle, but she said he could come back for that next week. And he disappeared into the distance. We'll probably see him on the news some night. Joanne could be reporting on him actually sometimes. You wouldn't know. The guy, you know. This one caused a lot of confusion for people, so I'm going to clear it up for you. The legal age of consent to sex in Ireland is the same for boys and girls. We've one of the highest legal ages in Europe. The criminal law in Ireland changed in June 2006. It used to be 15 for a boy and 17 for a girl under criminal law. That year, they brought criminal law in line with child protection guidelines. The legal age of consent in Ireland is 17 for both boys and girls. They also changed the distinction in 2006 between heterosexual and homosexual activity. So now it doesn't matter who's having sex with who, the legal age is 17. So if anyone disclosed they were sexually active under 17, we can't promise to get that private or confidential either, which leads to the obvious question that I get asked most often. If we can't promise to keep stuff private or confidential, do we rat on people? If YHS ratted on people, there'd be nobody come in. Because that's the one thing I love about your age group. You're dead honest. You just tell your friends, don't go in there to rat you out. And that's why I say to people, we'll never do anything behind somebody's back. We'll always talk through what we need to do next. The other day on Wednesday, I helped set up file number 10,000 in YHS. Every time somebody comes in, or when they come in, their file is set up. The first time they come in, they get a number. And on average, people have used the place between 5 and 6 times. We reckon since the 1st of September 2004, we've had about approximately, and this is conservative, about 55,000 individual sessions with young people. That doesn't happen if you're ratting people. So that's what the legal age of consent to sex is. We get a lot of people walking in the door worried. And this guy came in a few years back. he'd heard me speaking in the school, and he stood in front of me, he does this. He says, Liam, how's it going? He said, I'm a bit worried about, and he starts winking at me. He said, I'm a bit worried about, so I said to him, I said, the twitch in your eye, is it? No. I said, no. He said, and then he starts doing this, I'm a bit worried about, he says, I'm a bit worried about downstairs, he said. So I remember doing this, I went, now that's a ground floor by solid oak, and no. So then he puts his hands in his pockets and he does what I call the on-the-spot chicken walk. So no, he's like this in front of me. Right? He said, geez, Liam, I'm a bit worried about that. Do you know it yourself, boy? So I said, I better take him into a room before he gets heart failure or something. So I brought him in, I sat him down. And have you ever been in a situation where you're talking for about 10 minutes, but you're getting nowhere? Usually we do it if we're in trouble or we're doing it if we're embarrassed about something. So he kept kind of, so I said to him after about 10 minutes, I said, geez, none of us are getting any younger here. I said, well, what's the story? So then he came out with, he says, he came out with the classic, I'll never forget it. I burst out laughing. He said, Liam, he said, I'm worried about the little general downstairs. I went, what? He says, the little general. I said, your penis, is it? And he said, yeah. He said, that thing. I said, it's called a penis. And he went, oh yeah, right. So that was grand anyway, got him sorted and settled and got him booked in for an STI appointment. And going out the door, he says to me, Liam, he said, I'm 17 years old, he said, and it's the first time I said the word penis. I remember patting him on the back and I said, well done. He said, because that's a foot. I said, that's a knee, that's a leg, that's a hand, that's a finger, that's a nose. I said, the organ between your legs is called a penis. But guess what? He said, what? I said, behind it, there's a little sack called a scrotum inside, and there are two little balls, and they're called testicles. Ta-da! I said, they're just body part names. But we put slang words on them, because we don't use the words that often. So we've no problem with YHS with people using slang, none. But I'll always use the correct body terminology back, because what we're trying to do is to break down the barrier so people feel a little bit more comfortable talking about their sexual health. I actually told the guys at the back about the fellow who came in one day and freaked me out, like he wanted to show me his rash, and I'm kind of going, I don't want to see your rash. I'm not a doctor. That slogan, if I could put it up over the wall, I would, on the main street, but I don't think I'd be allowed to. That came from 3 lads who came into the service back in 2004. We were only open about 2 months at a time. And these 3 lads appeared one day, it was on a Thursday evening, and one of them said to us, they said, they were mumbling in the door, they were looking for condoms, and I do condom information session. We don't have bowls of condoms, we don't just give them out, because I found over the years, I'm still waiting to meet the first person who knows everything they need to know about using them. So we'll actually go through the information, the sexual health information. So the 3 boys came in, and after a lot of mumbling and the whole lot, we got them sorted, and that was grand. But going out the door, one of them made that comment, and I figured it was the most important comment that I figure has ever been made inside in the place. He said, going out the door, he said, you know what, he said, sex is more than just about shagging someone, isn't it? And these were 3 lads who came in with all the bravado and the whole lot, like, and sure what they were doing, what they weren't doing, but the most important 2 words in that statement is the last bit, isn't it? They were going out the door thinking. And what I've been trying to do in the place for the last 17.5 years in my role is to, if I can get people thinking a little bit about their situation or about decisions that they're making. I always say to young people inside the place, it's not my job, and I don't give advice. I don't tell people what to do, and I don't nag people. Quite sure I do that with my own kids. But what I try to get to is to get people thinking, get them questioning, get them wondering, not lecturing them. I think people are lectured too much, pick your own age group. You've enough of lecturing. So I don't go down that route. So we try and get people thinking a little bit. Unfortunately, due to COVID, I can't do these things with you. If I was able to do this normally, I would have asked every single one of you to look through these earlier on. These are my drunk goggles. And when you look through them, your eyes get huge, but they're very blurred and the whole lot. It gives you a real life kind of what it's like when you're drunk, when you're stone cold sober. Because when you're getting drunk as you're drinking, so you don't realize you're getting drunk as quickly as you are. And over the years, I've kind of gone into the crowd and asked people when I've been speaking here to tell me how many drinks they think that is. And a lot of people kind of underplay it. You can't talk about sexual health and you can't talk about mental health and pressure and everything else, particularly if you're your own age group, without talking about alcohol and alcohol use, because it's quite a big issue. I'm quite sure there are possibly people in the room here who've drank. Quite possible there are loads of people out there as well online looking in as well, who kind of nodding in your head saying, yeah, I've drunk, I've had alcohol, I've been drunk or whatever. In relation to the goggles, I had a guy one day came into me and he told me that he drives his car after a few scoops at weekends, rural area, he was living in a rural area. I remember asking him, how much is a few scoops? And he said, you know yourself, like 3-4 pints. And I said, all right. So then I asked him, would he give me a lift out to Blarney? I knew he lived out that direction. I said, look, I need to collect something from a chemist. He said, all right, no bother, right? So I took these out and I handed it to him and I said, would you mind wearing them when you're driving your car? And he looked into them and that's what he said to me. He said, you must be off your head, but you couldn't drive your car wearing them. She said, I can't see. And I said, but that's what you're doing every weekend. So you don't realize that you're as drunk as what you are. He didn't like the way the conversation was going. He swore at me, he threw them at me, and he swore and he walked out. But about a week later, there was a call came in to our front desk and it was put down to me, and I recognized the voice straight away. And his first line, he said, sorry there, but last week I got a bit worked up. And I said, that's all right. He said, am I barred from the place? I said, no. I said, we don't bar people. I said, even if somebody come into the place and stab me, I'd want to meet them to kind of, do you mind me asking you, why'd you stab me? I'd like to have a conversation about it. But I thanked him for coming back. And then we got a conversation going. And that's what I'm trying to do inside in the place. I talk about consequences quite a bit. And I remember walking up Patrick Street. I'm going back now about 14 years ago. And there was a young woman pushing a buggy, and the child in the buggy was about 2 years old. And as she passed me, I would have walked right by her, only she kind of saluted me, she called me by name, and then I looked at her, and then I kind of recognized her. And she said, Liam, do you remember me? And I said, geez, I do, how are you? And she said, look, do you have a moment? She said, I'm just worried about something, and do you still work with people? I said, yeah. And so we had a coffee, and we sat down, and then she said to me, she said, Liam, do you remember so-and-so? And she gave me a guy's name. And I said, I do. She said, Liam, do you remember how he died? I said, I do. I said, actually, as it happens, the morning he died, I said, I happened to meet him. I was walking through one of the housing estates where I was working at the time. And I happened to bump into him as he walked out his driveway. And he had brought a smile on his face. And geez, little did I know, within 12 hours, the guy'd be dead. You know, young guy, similar in age to you. And what had happened was, she said to me, what had happened, this guy was, a gang of them had gone out that night. The typical scenario you'd see in any village and urban area in Ireland. Gang went out that night, 16, 17, 18-year-olds drinking in a field. And in the middle of the session, your man keeled over and hit the ground. And the people who were with him panicked. And they ran. And they reckon the guy was discovered maybe an hour later by somebody walking his dog, who called an ambulance. But by the time the ambulance got there and stuff, it was too late. And at this stage now, there's tears streaming down this young woman's face. And she said, Liam, she said, I was one of the friends in the field that night, those years ago, she said, and I still get nightmares about that night in the field. And I remember, she said, I was a bad friend. And I looked into her eyes and I said, you weren't a bad friend. I said, you were a 14-year-old kid who got scared. But what was really hurting her, and I arranged for her to meet with a therapist and a counsellor, and she was open to doing that, and hopefully that helped her. You're free to make your own choices, but you're not free to choose the consequences. And it's something that I try and get across, and that's what that story is illustrating. Like the choice that was made that night, going out and enjoying themselves or whatever, and it had horrible consequences that none of them thought would have been possible when they went out. And I remember opening my youth centre for that young guy's removal and his funeral, and I hundreds of young people inside in the place. We had the place open one night till 2 o'clock in the morning, just giving people a space where they could come in and talk and cry and think about the guy. So I'd like you to kind of keep that one in your heads. You're free to make your own choices, but you're not free to choose the consequences. Parents, I always mention parents. A lot of my work involves working with parents and guardians. The one thing I say about parenting is this: I'm a dad. I have a daughter who's 22, she's in college. I have a son who's 20, he's in college, and I have a son who's 5, he's just started junior infants. When I became a dad, nobody gave me a book. As a parent, I'm winging it. I'm chancing my arm. I'm making it up as I'm going along, and my kids know that because I told them. I remember when my son was 10, he looked up at me one day and he said, Dad, you have no clue what you're doing, do you? And I said, no. said, you don't train to be a parent. People seem to think as I'm working with teenagers every day of the week that I know what to do. I've dealt with very difficult situations in my career, but I do know if my kids said the same things to me, I'd fall apart. Why? I'm their dad. So sometimes what I try and encourage people to do is if they can step into the shoes, I know parents and guardians can be a pain in the head. And you feel sometimes when you're 16 years, geez, I'm being lectured to and they're having a hop off me or giving out to me or whatever. I've worked with a lot of parents and guardians over the years, and through my work in YHS, particularly with younger people coming in, we have to involve parents and guardians. So what I try to do is try and encourage people to stepping into the shoes of the other person. It can be a tough enough gig for parents and guardians, they're wired to kind of freak out about stuff. I was told my daughter was born all those years ago that I'd never understand the true meaning of the word worry until I became a parent. And I think back now and I said, the person who said that to me never said a truer word. Because you just tend to worry a lot all of the time. Social media and the internet is probably one of the greatest inventions this world has ever seen. But I had somebody in me last week and they checked their phone about 6 times, 7 times in the first 5 minutes of the session. And I said, what are you checking for? I said, I'm checking for messages. I said, but you're here for you. I said, so I asked them to put the phone away, and that was a massive challenge to them. I had a guy years ago, and he actually took 2 calls in the first 5 minutes. And I challenged him, I said, geez, could you put your phone away? And he said, no. I said, I can't turn my phone off, it doesn't go away. I said, is it broken or something? He said, no. So then I asked him, I said, if I actually went to move it to another room, what would happen? And what he said to me was, he said, you wouldn't get to the door. And I'm going, what? He said, you would. I said, what would you do? The guy actually threatened violence on me if I tried to move his phone to a different room. And the whole session was then about that, because he kind of surprised himself. The number of people I work with who say they get into hassle from friends and stuff because they didn't answer a text straight away, or they didn't answer a phone call, or they didn't get back straight away. I had a girl one time telling me she was so stressed because her friend didn't get back to her straight. I said, maybe she was in the bathroom. So there's massive pressure there, people feeling that, geez, I have to get back to somebody straight away. No, you don't. I was out with some friends going back a bit, and my phone rang, and I apologized for the ring. We were out having a bit of lunch. And these are adults, similar in age to myself, and they said, geez, Liam, your phone's ringing, there's somebody looking for you. I said, but sure, that's why I have a voicemail. I'll leave a message. She said, well, when did you get back? I might get back tomorrow. Just a panic. Cyber safety, or the cybernet, I think. I saw this only on the way, and they're encouraging people from tonight, 5 o'clock until 5 o'clock tomorrow, to actually have a phone free, social media free, turn it off, put it away. Take 24 hours, break. There's a challenge for everyone. Could you put it away for 24 hours and not look at it? The world will still continue to turn. It's okay to say you don't know. I always say to people, sometimes that's the best answer to a question. If you don't know something, you don't know. Which is why I always say, if I'm asked a question I don't know, I'm not going to waffle. I'll say, you know what, lads, I actually don't know. If you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And that was Marcus Antonius Aurelius. He died in 180 AD. And I saw that in action about 6 years ago. Do you know what that is? Stress ball. I have one of those on the go the whole time. When I pulled up and parked outside here earlier on, I was squeezing after about 10 minutes. You heard the nervousness in my voice when I started talking a while ago, because I became acutely aware of it myself. Despite the fact that I'm well used to standing up in front of crowds of 800-900 people in this kind of a setting, the nerves hit me really, really badly. I gigged in pubs for many years. And there was many a time before actually taking to the stage or starting to start my set or whatever, I'd be in the bathroom getting sick from nerves. Once I started, I was okay. So this baby goes everywhere with me. And a number of years back, I was driving up I live back in East Cork. I was driving up between Middleton and Carritool on a dual carriageway, and there was a pile up ahead, or there was a crash or something, and traffic was stopped. So I stopped in the fast lane, and I happened to look at the car in the slow lane. And there was a guy, and I could see the whites of his knuckles. He was stuck onto the steering wheel, and all I could hear, even through the closed windows, he was going, "This guy," your man was going nuts. He was gone the colour of this. And I was saying, geez, he's going to get a heart attack or something. So back in the 80s, if you wanted somebody to roll their window down, you did this. nowadays, so I felt a bit of a plonker kind of doing that. So I kind of got his attention. I went, so he rolled his window down. I rolled my passenger window down, and he kind of, through gritted teeth, shouted it back across me. He said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "That's my question." I said, "You all right?" He said, "Well, what's wrong?" He said, "Jesus, the traffic. And all I was getting out of him was, late meeting. So I figured, you're late for a meeting. Because they're stuck to the things. I said, "Geez," I said, so I held that up. I said, "Do you know what that is?" And he said, "No." So as I was kind of speaking over the traffic stuff, I said, "Ball." So he's going, "What?" I said, that's a ball." He said, "What would you do with it?" I said, "Well, squeeze it to the beat of the music." I said, "That's what I do when I'm stuck in traffic." I said, "Sometimes it's small fellas in the back, I'll horse it back and Neil throw it back at me." I said, "Sometimes I play head tennis against the windscreen, throw it up and I'd be nothing against the thing." So it's very handy yoke to have. I said, because the fact of it here is we're not going anywhere. So I said, shouting and roaring and it isn't going to change it. I said, you have the power over here going to react to this situation. She started to calm down a small little bit. And then I asked him, I said, "Do you want it?" And he said, "All right, so." So I decided I'd go all cricket on it and figured, geez, I'll bowl it now through the, open window across, made a total pig's ear of it. It bounced off the inside of my car, came back and hit me on the head. And he actually burst out laughing. It was the thing that broke the ice. So just as we were moving off, I threw it like that, and he stuck his hand out his window and he caught it. And he looked at me and he said, "Thanks for that." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Getting a heart attack over being late for a meeting," I said, "it's not worth it." I said, "So you're late. The world keeps turning. We have the power. It's our estimate of any situation we're in that very often causes distress. We have the power to revoke that at any moment. So we are more powerful than what we think." I'd like to say very quickly just the 4 C's. In any relationship, myself and 2 colleagues came up with this a number of years back. The 4 C's, and this is in any relationship, whether within families, between friends or romantically: communication, consent, care for yourself, and consideration for the other person. That's my mantra the whole time. So important in any relationship. A lot of stuff been done around the whole issue of consent at the moment. And it's a big part of my work, the whole issue of consent and sexual health. I think I've just broken something. Sorry, Brendan. This word normal, geez. Joanne said earlier on that the word, I think when I heard you, the word disability is one that, as Peter Griffin would say in Family Guy, grind your gears, This word normal is the one that kind of gets me. I'm the person here at the bottom. Apparently normal people check their pen for ink, you draw a line. I'm the kind of guy who doodles all over the place. I got into trouble after my 5th year parent-teacher meeting. My mother went up to parent-teacher meeting, and she came home and she said, I said, "Ma, how did I get on, ma'am?" I always had this fear, how did I get on? Am I still in the school kind of thing? And she said, "Geez, Liam, I didn't realize you were doing art." So I said, "I don't do art, ma'am." I said, "All right." The desk my mother was sitting at, about a good portion of it, somebody doodled on the desk with pencil, and this doodler did the unbelievably stupid thing by signing her name. Liam Ducey, my son was Ducey, Liam Ducey was here with the date, the whole lot. My mother sitting at the desk, and she sees my wonderful graffiti on the desk. I got absolutely mangled. But that's how I check my pen. First, I'll just take the biro for a walk. I now do my doodling at meetings and stuff, because I have to kind of doodle. I'm a doodler. I do my doodling now on paper. I came across this quote, Greta Thunberg, whom a lot of you have probably heard of. "When haters go after your looks and differences, it means they've nowhere left to go, and then you know you're winning. I have Asperger's, and that means I'm sometimes a bit different from the norm, and given the right circumstances, being different is a superpower." And the reason that kind of struck me is I have a lot of young people at the moment who will talk about their autism, or they'll talk about Asperger's, or they'll talk about how they're perceived as being different. And that could be down to their gender identity, it could be down to their sexual orientation. You see the language they have around, it's a very clear statement. And I suppose it's what I like about it. First thing, you can disagree with, people disagree with maybe what she says or a way of doing things. But I do admire her for having the courage to actually stand up as a young teenage woman and actually standing up and sharing her voice and what she thinks. I do admire her for that. And I suppose what I'm saying there is there's possibly people sitting in the room here and certainly out there as well who possibly feel different or feel that they're not normal, whatever that is. If you can take one message away from this slide is we are all absolutely wonderfully unique and talented in our own ways. And never forget that. In all the people who've lived on this planet from when people first came onto this planet to now and all the people left to come onto this planet, there is nobody like you. You are that unique. And this world is a better place because you're in it. So if you can take that with you today, going out the door. Normally, again, I'd pass this around, but that's a bottle of water, it's about half full. It's not that heavy. I could stand here like this, probably get maybe 20 minutes out of it. What do you think would happen after 20 minutes if I stood here like this? Okay, so my arm would start to get numb. So what would happen to the bottle, do you think? Well, okay, so you might actually see a visible shake, absolutely. Or sometimes what happens is you might see my... So what could I do to remedy that? I could put it down, so I could say, yeah, put it down, absolutely. Anything else? Sorry, you were... Put my hand, so I actually physically move my hand and bring it here. It's much easier, or even hold it like this. Much easier to hold it, absolutely. Anything else? I could drink the water, so to actually get rid of the water out of the bottle, it weighs less, yeah. I could use 2 hands, yeah. Change hands, yeah. Anything else? I could ask somebody to come up and I could give it to them. Here, could you give me a hand with that? So all the answers you're there given are spot on. If you all came back in 12 hours' time, I was still standing here like this, you might say, geez, your man's still inside holding the bottle. If you come back this time tomorrow and you saw me standing there holding the bottle, you might maybe get an assessment from me or something saying, what's he doing? The bottom line is, there's not a lot of water in there. It's not that heavy, but the longer I hold on to it, the heavier it gets. And it's the same with stuff in here. The longer we hold on to stuff in here, the heavier it potentially gets. And we've all probably heard the phrase, like, talking to someone is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Being able to reach out and say to somebody, do you know what, I'm struggling. I'm not doing well. I'm really worried about something. It's so, so important. Share the load. You don't have to carry stuff on your own. I came across this one only recently, Robin Williams, who was somebody, an actor I admired hugely, and still do. People don't fake depression, they fake being okay. Remember that. And what I love is the last 2 words, because this has been my mantra since this whole COVID thing started. Be kind. More than ever, we need to learn to be kind first and foremost to ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. Most people I'm working with at the moment, I've met over the last 18 months or talked on the phone and all the stuff that you kind of did during all the lockdowns. People struggling, beating themselves up, wishing they were doing things better or whatever. All any of us can do in any situation is do our best. And if we can start off by being kind to ourselves, third of the 4 C's, care for yourself. And then the last one, consideration for other people. If you can be kind and show kindness to your fellow human beings. You walk into your school, I'll take your start time at 9 o'clock, or all the people out there looking in, you start whatever day, and you're walking in with the hundreds of other people who are walking into the school. You have no idea what's going on in somebody's life. No idea. Or what load or what burden they're trying to carry. Sometimes what can make a difference to somebody's day is one simple word. Hi. How you doing? Doesn't mean you're all going to be best buddies or anything. That's not realistic. But even that simple thing, geez, hi, how's it going? We've all come through a very tough time. This COVID thing has affected all of us in ways we don't even understand yet. And it's affected all of our families and the people we care about most. So if you can take those 2 words with you in your heart as you leave today, be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the other people that we come into contact with. I love rumors. I always find out amazing things about myself I never knew. I found out some wonderful things about myself by what people have said about me, most of them untrue. But there's a lot of pressure there again. People say that they're hearing stuff or people giving rumors about them. Again, I come back to be kind. Before you say anything about somebody else, think in your head and in your heart, do I really need to say this? Is it true? Do I need to get involved? Because maybe you don't. A meaningful life is not being rich, being popular, being highly educated, or being perfect. It is about being real, being humble, being strong, and being able to share ourselves and touch the lives of others. It is only then that we could have a full, happy, and contented life. Never sing in the shower. Singing leads to dancing, dancing leads to slipping, and slipping leads to paramedics seeing you naked. So remember, don't sing. Clearly that's tongue in cheek because I love singing. The last thing I want to say to you is this. Be strong enough to stand alone. We spend most of, I read this one time that kind of struck with me, we spend most of our teenage life, and I remember myself as a teenager. I was tall, skinny, awkward. I did the spots really well. I could do dandruff really, really well. There was a shampoo came out called Head and Shoulders, didn't work. I got all sorts of nicknames. I got the really creative nickname from when I was 7. You get glasses when you're 7 years old. I'm going back now to the 1970s in Ireland. My parents couldn't afford glasses, so I got the social welfare glasses. These were either brown or white. They were given to you by the state. I was spared the whole thing of having a bit of string around the back of my head. Thankfully, I was spared that. Couldn't afford hairdressers growing up. A neighbour cut my hair. It was kind of what was called a bowl haircut. It was kind of cut around it. It was grand. So I remember being this age. Somebody asked me one time, would I go back to being a teenager again? I said, Jesus, no, I hated it the first time. Why would I go back? But we spend a lot of our teenage lives trying to fit in, and then a lot of our adult lives trying to be individual. So be strong enough to stand alone. Be smart enough to know when you need help. And be brave enough to ask for it. So if you feel you need help, be brave enough to actually say those words, I need help. Remember that young woman I told you about who came in and she was suicidal? The words she said gone out the door. She said, Liam, I came in here knowing today you'd do something about this. She said, I need help. There isn't a single person in this room who at some point in their life hasn't needed help at some level. We're human. We're not superhuman all of the time. There are times we need help, and it's okay to ask for it. I'm not saying YHS is the only place that can give help. I'm just here today because I work in the place. And I'm saying it's a place that you can reach out to if you feel you do need help. Remember the email address, yhs@hse.ie. That's on the brochures you guys are going to get. If you're out there looking in at me, if you can write that bit down, the phone number is going to change. Unfortunately, we don't have a new number yet, but as soon as we get that, we'll get it out to people. Can I genuinely thank you today? I asked you at the very start, using the example of sheep guy, that you kind of zone in if you can to this. And I've made eye contact with every single person in the room today, and every single person in the room has made eye contact back with me. I genuinely would like to thank the people sitting in front of me for coming along today. And I'd like to thank the people out there who are sitting in their classrooms across this wonderful county of ours, watching in. And I hope you've gotten something from this today. So my name is Liam. The people I work with in YHS are wonderful people. I've described them as the finest group of people I've had the privilege and pleasure of working with. A lot of us are there since the very, very beginning. Youth Health Service is a place that genuinely cares for young people. So I hope you'll take something from this today. Okay? Listen, mind yourselves, all right? Hang in there. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Liam. If you can hold on for a couple of seconds, we'll just see if we have any questions that are going to come in. So does anybody in the audience or online want to give us a question? I'll give it a minute or so. Anybody here? When you're as good as you are, Liam, you know, you answer all the questions.
Just on the questions. Sorry, no, I'm going to wander off all over the place. I'm filling time now while he's waiting for all the questions to come in from It's very difficult. You know, there's a small group and you're asked, anyone have a question? And people are going, Jesus, no way I'm going to shove my hand up here or whatever. It takes me back years. A common question I ask people is to think back to their sex education that they got over the years. You know, a lot of people go back to primary school, okay? So let's see, does this ring true for you? So think back to your primary school situation and the sex education you possibly got. Was probably something along the lines of maybe somebody came in from the outside or there was a teacher delivered this and they might have used a resource called Busybodies. Any of you remember that cartoon thing? No? Some people, no? It's an excellent resource, really good resource. But sometimes what happens is that people show the video or they come in and there's this whole awkwardness and the whole lot. And then there's usually the bit where somebody says, now 12-year-olds are all sitting there mortified. Does anyone now have any questions? And you're there, who in a classroom like that is going to shove their hand up and say, yes, I have a question about erections or something. Yeah, no, you're not. You're going to disappear. So if you feel confident in a minute, I'll after we finish this bit, I'll wander over there or something. If somebody wants to come up and ask me anything, just wander up. There's no panic. Is that right?
No, there's nothing coming in but a couple of well dones and for a great speech. And as you said, hang on, there is something. Not just a thank you, Liam. But again, as Liam said, you can contact through the email if people do have questions that they don't feel comfortable disclosing here. But I'd just like to finish up by saying thank you to everyone, to Mary, to Joanne, to Liam for speaking today. It's a different way of doing things and hopefully we'll be back to having a room full of 700 or 800 students here next year. But thank you very much for coming along today and speaking. It's very, very much appreciated and I hope everybody, both online and here, got something from it. I'd like to thank the students who are physically here and to Douglas Community School for going to the effort of getting here and taking time out of your day to be here with us. And to all the schools and the teachers that are watching online, I hope you've got something from it and that it changed your day and maybe you took a little bit of nugget of information away with you that can help you. We're here to help, so if you need any advice in relation to mental health and how to look after it, you can contact us on corkmentalhealth.com. And there's other fabulous services out there like Pieta House and Samaritans that can be contacted also. I'd also, lastly, just like to thank all the staff of Cork Mental Health, to Elaine especially, and to Olive, Susan and Maura for all their help. As Liam said, this doesn't happen on its own. There's lots of other people who go to helping with Cork Mental Health and everything that we do. So thank you very much to everyone. I hope you have a great day and please contact us if you need any help. Thank you very much.